As per the Quran, 6.1 billion people will burn in hell for all eternity just because they are not Muslims, and only 1.9 billion people will go to heaven. According to the Quran, during sexual intercourse, if the man is more happy, the child will resemble the man, and if the woman is more happy, the child will resemble the woman. Prophet Muhammad's wife speaking, and she confesses that there were some single copies of the Quran which were in her room and which were eaten up by a sheep. Your religion to you, my religion to me. This is the one ayat that almost every Maulvi, every Maulana, every apologist holds up. This verse has been cancelled. The verse that has come in its place, fight. Fight until the whole world accepts Islam. Fight until there are no non-Muslims left. Namaste. Today I have this book, Why I Can't Follow Islam. This is the autobiography of Dr. Ahmed. Now, Dr. Ahmed is a medical doctor. He was born into an Orthodox Muslim family. He grew up as an Orthodox Muslim. But over a long period of time, Dr. Ahmed kept going farther and farther and farther away from Islam. And today, he is an ex-Muslim. This is the journey of a doctor from being an Orthodox Muslim to becoming an ex-Muslim. So, let me read out a few pages from his autobiography. Dr. Ahmed says he was born into a large Muslim family. He was the youngest of the 8 children. Okay, and then this is me reading. So I means Dr. Ahmed. How the change happened, how it all changed. Like most other young, bright Muslims, I was also involved with the Tablighi Jamaat. I firmly believed that Islam is the best religion and Quran is the most perfect book. I was brought up to believe that Quran is the one book that everybody has to read, and reading the Quran is enough, and that Quran is the most perfect book full of scientific facts. I had never read the Quran myself. I believed whatever the Maulvis, Maulanas and apologists like Zakir Naik had told me. And like a typical Tablighi Muslim, I used to invite other people to accept Islam. It was part of my life, convincing everybody how wonderful Islam is, how perfect the Quran is, and how they should give up their own religion and become a Muslim. So, once I was trying to convince one of my friends, non-Muslim friends, to accept Islam. While I was in Saudi Arabia, this friend sent me an email in response to my tablighi, in response to my trying to explain to him what a perfect book the Quran is. So I opened my inbox and I saw this email from a friend whom I had invited to Islam. The file that he had attached was a debate between a Muslim and an ex-Muslim. This was not the usual debate between a Hindu and a Muslim or a Christian and a Muslim. This was a debate between a Muslim and an ex-Muslim. So I started going through the whole thing, and this was the first step. This was the first day that I started doubting the perfectness of the Quran. This was my first step away from my religion. The world population at present is around 8 billion, of which only 1.9 billion are Muslims by birth or by name. And who knows how many of these 1.9 are actually practicing Muslims. As per the Quran, by Islamic logic, 6.1 billion people will burn in hell for all eternity just because they are not Muslims, and only 1.9 billion people will go to heaven. I could not accept that the mighty Creator has created this. Did the mighty Creator create 6.1 billion people just to burn them in hell for all eternity? And many of these, I myself had non-Muslim friends. I had 2 friends who were Hindus and who were very good. They had a sympathetic heart. They were kind to me. They treated everybody with respect. The thought of somebody going to hell just because he is not a Muslim was not very logical. This is the first time I felt the Quran was really not all that perfect a book. So from there on began my journey far away from Islam. As a medical doctor, there were several things that as a medical doctor I could not condone. For example, in the Quran it says, "Do not bow to the rising sun. Under no circumstances shall you bow to the rising sun." The first namaz of the day, Fajr. Fajr should be offered to Allah before sunrise. As a doctor, I clearly know that the rays of the rising sun contain a lot of vitamin D, and standing in front of the rising sun cures a lot of diseases. Sunrise is one of the best disinfectants. What is this perfect book telling me? The perfect book is telling me not to bow to the rising sun at any cost. Once again, the perfectness of the perfect book didn't seem so perfect after all. And then, page 78, it said, Allah sends an angel when a woman is pregnant, when the baby is growing in the womb of the woman. Then, on the 40th day, 40, on the 40th day, Allah sends an angel inside the womb, and the angel writes whether that child should be a girl or a boy. Gender is decided on the 40th day. Once again, as a medical doctor, there was no way I could believe this. Anybody who has studied even high school biology knows that when the XX chromosomes come together, it is a girl. When the XY chromosomes come together, it is a boy. And gender is decided at conception. Gender is not decided on the 40th day. As a doctor, I could not accept this. And once again, the perfectness of the perfect book was not so perfect. Who does the child resemble? Page 128. Who does the child resemble? Honestly, this answer seems very illogical. According to the Quran, during sexual intercourse, if the man is more happy, the child will resemble the man. And if the woman is more happy, the child will resemble the woman. So basically, whom will the child resemble is a question of who will have a better orgasm. Once again, as a medical doctor, there is no way I can accept this explanation. Genealogy, dominant genes, non-dominant genes, carryover genes, it's a big subject in itself. Who the child will resemble is definitely not decided by who will feel happier in bed. Once again, page 132. The Quran says that when the child is growing inside the womb, the bones are formed first and the flesh covering the bone comes later. As a doctor, I just cannot accept this. Everybody knows that the flesh is born first, the bones come later, and actually the bones keep growing until the human being is almost 17, 18 years old. So, to say that the skeleton is formed inside the womb, the skeleton is formed first and the flesh covering the skeleton comes later, that is so against every known and proven medical text. As a doctor, I could not accept this ayat of the Quran, and once again, the perfectness of the book was lost on me. So, not just as a doctor, I can go on and on, not just as a doctor, even as an ordinary human being, there are several things in the Quran that I could not accept. For example, most of these Muslim apologists always argue that Islam is meant for entire humanity, that Islam is a religion meant for the whole world. You know, Quran is a book meant for all the 8 billion people. But look at what the Quran says. In the Quran, it clearly says, this book is being written in simple Arabic for everybody to understand. The verses in this book are written in understandable Arabic. Please note, we want all of you to understand, so this book is written in clear and simple Arabic, and everything has been laid out clearly in Arabic. If the book is meant for humanity, there are 4 ayats that stress that we are writing it in Arabic for everybody to read. Obviously, everybody doesn't speak, read or write Arabic. So this book, the Quran, was meant for the people of Arabia. It was never meant for the whole of humanity. Once again, the perfectness was lost on me. Since we were young, we were taught that the Quran is a perfectly preserved book. And while other, holy books of other religions have been lost through the ages, Quran has been perfectly preserved. So, as I started reading the Quran and the Hadith itself say that many of the surahs and ayats of Quran were lost. In fact, here it says, there were some ayats of the Quran that had been written down. I had kept it in my room, but when Prophet Muhammad died, we were all busy making preparations for his burial. Everybody was busy in burying Prophet Muhammad. At that time, I did not notice a tame sheep entered my room and ate the only surviving pages of some parts of the Quran. A tame sheep ate up some of the ayats of the Quran, and those were the only copies available. This is Aisha bint Abu Bakr, Prophet Muhammad's wife, speaking, and she confesses that there were some single copies of the Quran which were in her room and which were eaten up by a sheep. So you see, the Quran is not perfectly preserved. And there are other chapters where it clearly says that several surahs and ayats were lost, either because they were not written down, or because they were burned, or the person who had written down had lost it, etc., etc., etc. So this what had been imbibed into me. The Quran is a perfectly preserved book. The Quran itself says on many occasions that the Quran is not a perfectly preserved book. And then there is the concept of abrogation, or naskh as it is called in Arabic. Naskh means abrogated, cancelled, deleted. You will find this naskh, this abrogation, in several places in the Quran. For example, in so many places it says, regarding this topic, whatever was written in chapter 1, that has been abrogated. From today onwards, you have to believe and practice what is being told in chapter 56. Regarding this topic, that which had been told in chapter 2, so every now and then you come across this. That what we had told earlier, forget that. Start believing this from today. That what was preached earlier, that is no longer valid. Start believing in this from today. One of the finest examples of this abrogation is the famous verse, your religion to you, my religion to me. This is the one ayat that almost every Maulvi, every Maulana, every apologist holds up. See, the Quran doesn't preach violence. See, the Quran doesn't preach force. See, it's written clearly here in the Quran. Your religion to you, my religion to me. You practice your religion, I will practice mine. See, the Quran doesn't, condone violence. What these apologists and Maulanas do not tell us is that this verse has been abrogated. This verse has been cancelled. The verse that has come in its place, fight. Fight until the whole world accepts Islam. Fight until there are no non-Muslims left. Fight the non-Muslims until they either accept Islam or at least pay jizya. Whenever and wherever you can, chase the non-Muslims out of their land and occupy their land. This is the verse that has replaced the old verse, one of the finest examples of abrogation. So, here in the Quran, it says, do not eat food that has been offered to any other god. Which is why in offices, even on Vijayadashmi or an Ayudh Puja or a Deepavali, if someone comes around giving sweets, Muslims are very reluctant to take it. And even if the Muslim picks up a sweet, he may or may not eat it. When you're not seeing, he'll probably throw it in the dustbin. That's because the Quran clearly says, do not accept food, sweets, even fruits that has been offered to another god. Once again, not as a doctor, but as a human being, I really couldn't, accept this. The perfect book was sort of losing its perfectness in my eyes. And then there were some humorous things written in the Quran that I had to laugh. Now, everybody knows that according to Quran, the earth is flat. Not only is the earth flat, according to the Quran, even the sky is flat. The sky is a roof above the earth. So here is the earth and here is a roof. The sky is a roof above the earth. And how is this roof standing? There are supposed to be invisible pillars all over the earth holding up this roof. Invisible pillars? Really? So apparently these invisible pillars are holding up the sky. And after reading all this, once again, the Quran did not seem so perfect anymore. And then, of course, there's the story of the sunset. Dhulkarnian, page 145-146. O Dhulkarnian, It's a story of Dhulkarnian who apparently reached the point where the sun sets. The sun is supposed to set in a pool of muddy water. And there are people living on the banks of that pool. First of all, it's difficult to believe that the sun sets in a pool of muddy water and the sun is 600 degrees Celsius. How can anybody live near the sun? The sun is setting in a pool of muddy water somewhere near Arabia. All this was so illogical that slowly but steadily I started taking steps away from the Quran. It was no longer a perfect book in my mind. One day, and it's not easy to give up the religion. As a doctor and as a human being, I'm extremely fond of music. But the Islam bans music. Quran doesn't support music at all. In fact, page 116, the Quran clearly says that pus, pus, the white pus that we get when we are wounded, when blood is flowing and pus is flowing, that pus. It says the pus is better than poetry. That poets are stupid people. And it's better if even if the body is filled with pus, it's okay, but the body shouldn't be filled with poetry because pus is better than poetry. How can anybody accept that pus is poems, songs, music? This is a vital part of human existence. It is art that separates the humans from the animals. And here is a book telling me that pus is better than poetry, that it's okay for the body to be filled with pus, but the body shouldn't be filled with poems. Once again, the perfectness of the perfect book was lost on me. There are many things in the Quran that I simply couldn't bring myself to accept. One of these, for example, page 83, it says here in the Quran, how to deal with a defeated king, how to deal with a defeated kingdom. Once the enemy has been defeated, collect all that once belonged to the enemy. The swords, the iron, the gold ornaments, the food grains, the horses, the camels, and the women. Yes, the women. It actually says the women. Okay. So, how should you treat the wife, the daughters, the sisters of the defeated king? How should you treat the women of the defeated enemy? Line them up and divide them amongst yourselves. Women are a part of war booty. Line up the women and divide them amongst yourself. After reading this, I was devastated. I felt that the United Nations Charter, the Geneva Convention Agreement is better than the Quran. At least the Geneva Convention Agreement clearly says women of the defeated kingdom, women of the defeated country should be treated with respect and should be sent back to their homes. But here, the Quran says line them up and divide them and whatever. So, after reading all this, one step at a time, I kept going farther and farther and farther away from the Quran. It was not easy. The dilemma is so painful. I was born and brought up as a Muslim. I had practiced Islam for years and years. To give up something that I had practiced for so long, it's really painful. It's heart-wrenching. But the logical mind, the scientific mind, just could not accept the teachings of the Quran anymore. As a doctor and as a human being, there was no way I could believe in the perfectness of the Quran anymore. So one fine day, I came out of the religion completely, and today I am an ex-Muslim. Thank you.